All right. My sound okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Can you see me in class? Or
No.
no? Okay. We have to work in that now. I believe you can now. Can you now?
Yeah, I can see you in class now.
Okay. I'll just try to keep my movements minimal. All right. All right. So, good day, everyone. Good morning to you properly to begin this class. And I hope you're having a very good time and we're ready for today. Today is very important that we're engaged with what I will be discussing. And it's also crucial that you understand the fundamentals of this because it's like a build up to every other thing that becomes theoretical that you have to understand and the questions you have to answer. You understand the questions you have to answer and the things and case scenarios you have to study. And of course, it's about the environment you will be working in if you want to practice as a journalist. So today we're talking about journalism and the ethnography of the newsroom. Every journalist must work within a room, and that room is called the newsroom. Um, in my earlier readings, when I was interested in journalism, when I decided career for studying journalism, I knew newsroom as what a madhouse where everybody is crazy, tension everywhere. So, what are those factors that influences what comes out of the newsroom? For you to understand that, you need to do ethnography. But what is ethnography? How is ethnography done? What comes out of ethnography is what we'll be discussing today. But before then, you recall that we've traveled this far from journalism, democracy, and to fourth estate. Fourth estate being the focus, journalism, democracy, and public sphere. Public sphere being the focus. Do you remember all of this? And we've got citizen journalism and digital culture, talking about people's engagement with the news and creation of the news, being part of the creators of what becomes news. And digital culture, what becomes our new digitalized lifestyle. How we are involved in the news making. And we went on to discuss journalism as a discourse. Because online, what becomes news are interactions. What people decide decide important. What is significant? What is odd? What is new? Especially in the world. So you have to engage this. For you to understand this discourse, you must be involved in some critical discourse activities. And we went on to discuss journalism and national identity, how journalism can help create, form identity. And then we moved on to understanding journalism and gender, representation of women in the media, and of course, in the news. We also considered the ratio of gender in terms of male-female workers in the news. We have more male-dominated journalism offices, settings than what we should expect, and that is why there is a reason and for this study. And we went on to talk about celebrity journalism, tabloidization, which talks about commercialization, intent, and motive for sustainability of the media business. And then 2 weeks ago, we discussed journalism as a professional practice, discussing news values. And last week, we dwelled more on, like I said, a topic dear to my heart, political economy of journalism, especially the study of the newspaper industry. And today, we have done all of this earlier. Today, we'll be looking at how all of this matters, and how it all comes together. Because without journalism, we won't be talking about all of these sub-themes. But then, like I mentioned, in this lecture, at the end of this lecture, you should understand what ethnography is and what it involves, and of course, what has been the findings from previous ethnographic studies. And what exactly is gatekeeping? You must have heard about it. Journalists are also gatekeepers. They keep what comes in and what goes out. In fact, they can open the entire door for whatever that comes in, but they decide what goes out, what you and I know. And then we'll talk about the further developments in the field, the benefit of ethnographic studies, potential problems, and of course, we'll have maybe 2 conclusions. But then, what is ethnography? How many of you are familiar with what ethnography is? Yeah, Andrew.
It's like the study of habits within a specific culture. So like in this context, it's like the way people behave in the newsroom. Like it's like sociological kind of study, like the way people interact.
Yeah. Great. Exactly. So, ethnography is a form of anthropology. And what is anthropology itself? It is study of how things work, study of human behavior and all. But then what is anthropology? Scientific study of human behavior and society. So each we say ethnography is a form of anthropology. So ethnography is a form of study. It's a kind of study of human behavior and society. But now we're talking about ethnography of the newsroom, meaning we'll be studying behavior and how things work within the news environments. But then I've answered these questions. So ethnography is a form of social research. It involves examining people's behavior in specific social setting. In this case, what will be the social setting in journalism? The newsroom, correct. And it involves consideration of how people in those settings understand their own behavior. What is the relationship between the news editor and the journalist? What's the difference and the influence of a journalist and a reporter? Who is a correspondent? Who is an editor? Who is a sub-editor? What is the role of somebody who lays out the stories on the pages? You know, a graphic editor can determine how a news is perceived. Anna. Laying pages, planning newspapers, the pages of newspapers, the color matters a lot, right? You must have been taught that, isn't it? Haven't you? In page layout and design. Colors of headline. If it is red, it means something. Blue, it means something. Black, it means something. If it is bold, it means something. If it is small, it means something. In all of this, it helps us understand the attitude of the content producers to news. Moving on, let's pay a careful attention to this. I'll give you a moment to take a look at it carefully. Above, we've got an highly observational. And on the right, we have researchers' role, more visible, and researchers' role, less visible. And below, highly participatory. And between highly observational and researchers' role, which is less visible, we have watching and attending a meeting or an event. And the one that is more visible, we've got counting, skill surveys, pilot sort, recording images, video. Meaning within this space, you've got more evidence. And yeah, highly participatory and tilted towards more visible. We talk about conducting a group discussion. And here, which is less visible, a co-worker, teammate, you see less here. And in fact, you see even more less here. But you have more recordings, things to study later. And here, you relate with them in real-time situation. Brandon? Brandon, what does ethnography involve? Yeah. Of course, a study of different researchers. Yeah, thank you for that. Keep alive. Of course, there are different definitions of ethnography. So if you have given me your own definition, you wouldn't be wrong. You understand? And you can still evolve because you give me one more definition in the next couple of minutes. So different researchers have suggested different definitions of ethnography. And it's, hello, attention please. But everyone can probably agree with Singer, which is the reason I've asked that we should pay careful attention to Singer's work on ethnography. He said it is an holistic description of cultural membership. An holistic description of what? Burden?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
An holistic description of cultural membership. That's his definition of ethnography.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you get it, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us more about this? What exactly? What is holistic?
Andrew is actually very good with words. So
Andrew, the baton has been passed to you. What is holistic?
When you take in, you're not focusing on one person, maybe you're focusing on the whole environment.
Having a broader picture of the entire thing to make a more reasonable and justifiable conclusion. Meaning that it is a more justifiable description or all-encompassing description of a cultural membership. Meaning having a clearer picture, a multi-perspective view of a situation. Still on this, it also entails studying people within their own cultural environment. If you study me when I'm in my office, the results you get will be different when I'm at home. It's a different result when I'm in class. It's different when I'm in a pub. And this will be entirely different when I'm designing. So he needs to study everything within the context of its functionality. So now, what is cultural environment in this context? What will be our cultural environment in this context? The newsroom. Please take a note of that carefully. And just before we move on, there's what we call cultural industry. The newspaper industry is considered an aspect of the cultural industry because they are able to transmit culture, identity, preserve culture, and promote identity, and of course, determine our views and our images and how we see cultures and identity. Is that making sense? So, therefore, it is important to understand all of this work. The film industry is also a cultural industry because what? They produce, promote, preserve, and of course, abuse cultures if they wanted to. So the researcher goes into the data. What will be the data in this context? Hello?
Case study.
What will be the case study? The data will be the data, you can obtain the data from the environment, from the setting, from the cultural environment. So the researcher goes to the data rather than sitting in an office and collecting it. you go to the newsroom because that's where your data will come out from. Your data is not in a paper. It is not in figures. It is in the activities. How is this person relating to this? How are they handling this story? What stories are they trashing? What categories do they fall? Ethnography, study of things within the context of their functionality. It also typically involves an in-depth investigation. Now, at this point in time, you are trying to find out, studying how, when this editor saw this story, what was the facial reaction? Investigation of a small number of cases, sometimes just a single case. You want to understand how administration of Liz Truss was reported in the news. Very short and very good study. Study the newspapers to give you an idea of how they have presented it. It also gives you an idea of how those contents were produced if there was an ethnographic researcher in the newsroom during the production. Then you'll be hearing conversations of, oh, let's cast this headline like this because this is a story we want to tell. And another medium will say, let's cast it this way because this is how we want people to say it. So people, the newsmakers, the journalists, the editors determine how you understand the story by framing it the way they want it to be presented. Let's talk about the methods. The methods are quite multiple, ranging from observation to interviews to visual recording, document analysis, and diaries and more. Most importantly, observation. Then you can then ask, why did you decide to do this? Then they will explain what you have observed. Then visual recording, you revisit it. Was I able to capture everything? Or, oh, let me relate it with the document. What's the document saying? How does it relate with the reaction? What does it mean to my observation? And how do all of those correlate based on the response I get from the interview? And of course, what is my diary? Taking notes. And you can invent more depending on how creative you are. Still on the method, some ethnographic studies also incorporate quantitative technique, meaning that there's some quantification system to all of this. And this can happen in form of questionnaires and content analysis. You are interested in content analysis studies. This means you're interested in understanding how things and patterns of things, the description of things. You're interested in questionnaires. You want to know what people's perception is, their opinion, their views of things. These two categories of method can be incorporated into ethnographic studies, and these can be quantified. Newsroom ethnographics. What exactly have they found? In fact, the question is, taking a look at gatekeeping theory of the media, how did it come about gatekeeping? Where did the word gatekeeping came from? For you to understand, something must have led to that. That's why you have to understand the history behind theories. You understand the history behind theories, isn't it? For everything that happens, there is a story to it, isn't it? Yeah. What have they found? Gatekeeping was one of those things. How did they come about gatekeeping? There was an earlier study by White in 1950. It went into the newsroom to study how things are working. And the reason journalists act the way they do and why they publish content, there are several millions and thousands and billions of stories that are newsworthy, depending on your news judgments. But how do you determine which to keep? How do you determine which to let go? How do you determine what to focus on? In fact, after that, which sources would you consider relevant to be interviewed to support a story? So early formative studies of the news are focused on how news processes how the processes that leads to the manufacturing in the context of Chomsky's manufacturing concepts, and of course, how the processes that leads to news creation. And they said in this process, there are a lot of information that comes, but then just selected makes it on the pages of the newspaper. And the process that explains this, the concept that explains it is gatekeeping. If I'm at the door, I determine who comes in and who goes out. That is the simple explanation of gatekeeper. So the reason for journalist conformity to news policy, there are policies that guide this, and it's also the effect of collective journalist expectancies upon reporting behavior. These are some of the things. Have a look at this model. The N stands for sources of news item. N1, 2, 3 are the news item. Take a look at it. And this is the gates. News item number 1 goes, but got to the gate and bounce back. Because the gatekeeper says, no, this is going nowhere. News item 4, the same experience, goes nowhere. And what happened to news item 2 and 3? It is allowed through. Who is M? M is the audience. That is what you see. You will never see 1 and 4 because there is a gatekeeper somewhere in the middle. So therefore, news item 1 and 4 is discarded and 2 and 3 selected. Simple explanation of gatekeeping theory. Moving on. Further developments in the field. Across the 1970s and 1980s, a number of censorship studies have occurred over a period of time, and they've also discovered that there are interests in the organization and the professional constructions of news, and of course, how news is manufactured. Ignore this. Manufactured. There should be a D after the manufacture. And the studies that speaks to these are Atede, Barnes, Epstein, and you want to take a look at Touchman. Touchman is very good. Sklashinga, very good. Gordon and Elliott, here studies, very good. All of this you can search up and then read if you want to know more. But then, all right. So, if one again, I give you, yeah. And this is our great PM who have moved Boris, who took UK out of the EU. Well, objectivity of criticism, 350 million NHS claim. Johnson said it is so there is a duty to report it. Meaning that this thing, because of this, because of the magnitude of this amount, he said there is a duty to report it. Meaning it should not be gate kept. It should go. It shouldn't bounce back based on the theory. So, further developments still on the field, typification, categorization, and ways that frame them. That is, war, conflict, they are framed in a particular way. Not everything that is happening between Ukraine and Russia makes it into the media. The aspect that Russia wants to get into the media gets into the media. The aspect that Ukraine wants to be amplified gets amplified. But who is in the middle? Who wants to tell the both sides of the story? You never can tell because everybody got an interest and they will gatekeep anything that is not supporting their interest. So typification, especially in cases of war and conflict, conflicts may not be physical, this could be conflicts of ideas and more. Organizational policies. Also in structures, there's what they call ownership interests and some policies that will guide what exactly comes out of this of an organization, of a news organization. Therefore, structures are in place so as to limit conflict between staff and superiors. So this can also it can have an effect on the different kind of news reporting, can have an effect on the kind of content. So if you are working with the Sun and your ideology, your philosophy about the kind of how news should be, if it doesn't align, if you get down there, you want to survive there, you want to be promoted there, you want to stay on the job, you must learn the style and focus on their sources and report the way they report. So these are policies. So the benefit of ethnography studies is that it helps us, one of the things it helps us understand, but reading Kotsu, he said, participant observation goes behind the scene of the media output to help reveal the complex of forces, constraints, and conventions that shape the selections and the silences of the media. Critical reading of media content to inferences about motivation and explanation, accounting for these outputs, and on this basis quite often get it wrong. Importantly, participant observation can also observe and analyze the selection of decisions and practices that consign news materials to the waste of and production of news silences. There's what it calls, there's this theory of spiral of silence by Elizabeth Nolan-Lima. You should read about that too, how news sources can be silenced because of exclusion and all. And processes leads to all of these development. You have to understand, ethnography studies help us to understand some of these dynamics and complexities. And potential problem with these studies is that, of course, in ethnography studies, beyond what we have here, I'll add to it. Let's just have this first. And Peterson said, well, the essential failing in ethnography, particularly as argued by positivists. Positivists are Brendan. Positivists. What are they? Who are they? They're essentially not in my class. The essential feeling of ethnography, particularly as argued by positive. Positives are those who believe that things that is truth out there and must be said just the way it is. You get it? So that it represents a phenomenon from a single perspective and offers little opportunity for confirmation from other researchers. Meaning that if you're studying a medium and your findings from a particular medium is the basis upon which you made a conclusion, then you may not be reflecting the entire truth because there are several other mediums which I have not studied. So this is part of the limitations of these approaches of studying, because you are just, I'm studying Guardian and I did an ethnography study of Guardian or the Sun. The knowledge provided is limited based on the context of where I've studied. So also, ethnographers of journalism will also rarely claim to review or explain everything, instead seeking only to describe their research settings as comprehensively as possible, which is what I want to base or add something to. And part of the thing is that even researchers have interest. They have an objective. You understand? So they want to tell a particular thing. It's in your head. You want to do something. So the objectivity is also based on the researcher's sentiment. That's why it's also good to document your philosophical underpinning. And then the potential problem still is that the second criticism is that ethnography approach has a methodological blind spot. There are some areas that are not covered. And as Koran has suggested, it is difficult to gain regular access as participant observer to senior level management. They won't allow a researcher to come into board meeting where they discuss critical issues that affect major events in the world. So it's a limitation. An ethnographer doesn't have access to senior levels of decision making. So conclusion number one is that there is an increasing centrality of the needs to conduct of politics and contextions. And of course, in a society, as well as the permutation of a wider news culture across the globe. This is according to Koto, and I'm just reading. So in this context, ethnographic studies on news production and practices remain as vital as ever for an improved understanding and power dynamics of news communication in the contemporary world. So secondly, which is second conclusion from this lecture, and the second take home that you should take is that news and its definition, it varies from one environment to the other. And so as the definition of news and news work become ever more elastic, meaning that it varies, it's expanding, it is expanding, and it's continue to expand, it will be increasingly difficult to determine the most useful target of ethnographic research. Yeah, and just as these changes make such research even ever more important, but more is needed than the patience and the will to engage in such research. So it is important you do a careful observation of the area you're trying to study, make a very good sense of everything, and try as much as possible to understand things just the way they are. And it's not easy to capture it. In fact, it is impossible because it's elastic. If I give you a rubber band, you keep expanding, you continue to stretch, and this is a field that is global. You can stretch to the limits. So, therefore, it is important to continue to study, create knowledge. That is why research remains ever necessary. So, on this note, we'll put an end to this lecture. Thank you very much. And if you've got any questions at this point in time, yeah, you want to clap, right? Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'll do that just before the seminars. Yeah, I said I was going to do the last one. I did it. Yeah, don't worry. I have got everything. I'm going to put it up there so you can study for your next assessment. So, have you got any questions at this point in time? Nally, Tam, have you got questions?
No questions from me.
No. So it's very clear and simple.
I think so. I think I've got it.
You think so?
I
Don't
think
I
so.
deserve some another applause? It's very clear and simple. Yeah, please give me some applause. I'll clap for myself if you don't clap for me. Yeah. Thank you, guys. So we'll go on a break, and then we'll continue with the seminar. Thank you. You have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take your question.
So how do ethnographers record their observations?
Diaries, we did mention of that.
Yes.
Audio recording, video recordings, notes, and they can as well conduct an interview to verify what they are saying. So these are part of the ways they record. Yeah, then after, what do you say? Yeah, all of this have to be explained clearly just the way you did it. That becomes the method. There are no strict methods to it, but there are some criteria you must satisfy. So thank you, guys. See you in the...
I read that they can't just collect the data and then present it. They have to draw conclusions and meanings. Right?
Yeah, of course, they have to interpret it, engage the text, critically examine it before they make conclusions. All right, if that's all the questions for now, you can save further questions for the seminar time, and then we'll meet in 10 minutes. Thank you, guys. Bye for now.